Maybe Vladimir Putin thought he had seen everything in Ukraine, but the situation is getting worse for Russian soldiers on the battlefield because there is a weapon made by the United States that Ukraine is now using to crush the enemy. It arrived quietly, without any big announcement, but suddenly Ukraine's arsenal was reinforced with one of the most feared artillery weapons in the world, and now it is gradually weakening some of Russia's weapons. Ukraine itself did not expect this, and Russia definitely did not see it coming. But because of a technology developed decades ago, Ukraine now has something that can change the course of the war. This weapon? The 203mm M110 self-propelled howitzer. It was given to the 52nd Artillery Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. According to United 24 Media, the brigade itself confirmed its arrival, and according to them, it was successfully integrated with Ukraine's locally made artillery, which is currently destroying Russia's spring offensive. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's begin. In a post on April 2, the 52nd stated that their equipment includes the two S-22 Bodana RM-70 Vampire rocket systems and the 203mm M110A. It may seem like a simple addition to the list, but it's not that simple because the arrival of the M110 has the potential to change the course of the battle in the coming months. And this brings up the question, how did Ukraine acquire this kind of weapon? This is a Cold War era weapon. The United States military retired it a long time ago. At first glance, it seems impossible for this to end up in Ukraine. But the truth is, being retired doesn't mean it's useless. The origin of these M110S is connected to an agreement made in October 2025. According to the report, Greece approved the transfer of 60 U.S.-made artillery systems to Ukraine. This includes 150,000 rounds needed to use them, as well as some Zuni rockets. The total value of the deal reached approximately 199.4 million euros, which is almost equivalent to $230 million. This means it's not just simple military aid, it's a major financial and strategic move. As the war continues, it's not just ammunition that's running out, but also money. Even resources, even each country's ability to support the fight. And with every deal like this, the involvement of different countries deepens, and its impact on the global economy becomes even stronger. In the end, this fight is not just about land, not just about territory. This is a battle of technology, supply, and money. And now it's clear that Ukraine has a new card to play, an old weapon with a new impact in modern warfare. Artillery and ammunition are also planned to be sent. These will go to Ukraine through the Czech Republic, and when they arrive there, they will be used directly. No modification, no refurbishment. At first glance, it seems like Ukraine is at a disadvantage and Greece is winning. But that's not the real story. For Ukraine, this is a huge deal, because the M110 howitzer has long been feared on the battlefield. It may not be modern or high-tech, but its strength lies in the volume and speed of its fire. It can unleash tremendous firepower in a short period of time. And in today's war, which seems to have returned to the style of battles from past decades, this kind of weapon is still very relevant. Not everything is about drones and precision strikes. Sometimes victory comes from the sheer amount of ammunition and the force of the impact. And it looks like this is not the end yet. According to reports, Greece has been using the M110A2 since the early 1980s. And before the deal, they had around 145 units, but only 60 have been sent to Ukraine so far. This means there's a possibility that more could still be sent, as this is part of Greece's modernization. They are gradually replacing their old systems with the standard 155mm NATO artillery. That's why the old M110s are becoming surplus to their needs. But for Ukraine, this is an opportunity. It's a chance to acquire powerful artillery that can break through Russian defenses and weaken their soldiers as they try to attack. And when it comes to value, the deal gets even better when you look at the included ammunition. According to United 24, Media Ukraine received 50,000 high-explosive M106 rounds. It also includes 40,000 rocket-assisted M650 rounds and 30,000 each of the M520, M509 A1 cluster munitions, and M404 improved conventional munitions. This means that the M110 is not only powerful, but also flexible. It can be used in various battlefield situations. And when it comes to war, versatility means a greater strategic advantage. And of course, this also comes with a cost. Every round, every system, every transport operation has a price. But in this kind of battle, the value of victory is higher than the cost. Now, there's another question. Can Ukraine get more M110? Actually, it seems so. If the report about Greece's remaining stock is correct, they still have enough supply that can be transferred in the future. And if that happens, Ukraine's artillery power will become even stronger. The pressure on Russia on the battlefield will also intensify. There is also a possibility that Greece has around 85 M110 howitzers that can be transferred to Ukraine. But there's a condition. They need to be in good condition to be used on the battlefield. If not, it will just add to Ukraine's expenses for repairs and logistics. That's why we first need to see whether there will be another agreement. For Greece, this is an opportunity to earn from old equipment they no longer need. But for Ukraine, this is an opportunity for them to strengthen their firepower against Russia, especially if Russia's style of fighting seems stuck in the past. It relies more on the quantity of artillery than on modern precision systems. The bigger question is this: can Ukraine get the M110 directly from the United States? Because this is the country that made this weapon. And there is now a system where NATO countries can buy weapons from the US.
At ipadala ito sa Ukraine.
This is called the PEARL, or Prioritized Ukraine Requirements List. In this system, Ukraine itself specifies which weapons they need. They don't wait for whatever the Allies will give. They have more control over the military aid. The use of money is more efficient. Their actions are more strategic. Until December 2025, more than $4 billion have been allocated through this system. This is a huge amount, and it's clear that more will continue to follow. If the M110 proves effective on the battlefield, Pearl could be used to acquire more of them. But there's one problem. There might not be enough supply left. According to data, the United States has produced around 1,100 M110 howitzers since it was introduced in 1963. Currently, it is still being used in some countries such as Turkey, Spain, Bahrain, Morocco, Jordan, and Greece. This means there are other countries that could possibly provide supplies as well. For example, Spain is one of those that could help if they agree. But when it comes to the United States, the situation is a bit complicated. There are reports saying it is still being used. Others say it was already retired in 1990. And it was replaced by the M109 as the main self-propelled howitzer of the U.S. In other words, even if there is demand, it's not certain if there is still enough supply.
At dito makikita ang tunay.
It's not just about how powerful the weapon is, but also about how many are available and how quickly they can be delivered to the battlefield. Because in modern warfare, victory isn't based on strength alone. It also involves supply, logistics, and budget. And right now, both Ukraine and their allies are trying to make the most of every resource they have. Now the question turns to a bigger mystery. What really happened to the 1,100 M109s? Is there an answer for some of them? According to reports from 1990, the United States used old M1 110 barrels to make parts for GBU-28 bunker-busting bombs. These were used in the Gulf War against Iraq. That was a practical decision. Instead of throwing them away, they were turned into new weapons, more cost-effective, more economical, more efficient. But this doesn't answer the bigger question. Are there any M110S left in the U.S. stockpile? What did they remove while taking out the barrels? If there are any left, even without the barrels, there's still a possibility they could be used. They could make new barrels. They could restore them. and they could give them to Ukraine, but this depends on two things. If there are any left, and if the United States will allow them to be sold or transferred through Pearl. For now, these are just possibilities, but there's a more important question. What is the effect of the M110 on the battlefield? The arrival of the M110 in Ukraine could change the dynamics on the front lines. In the areas where it will be used, a big change could happen, and here it becomes clear. This is not just an old weapon. It's a potential game changer. What does it bring to Ukraine? First, firepower. This is the kind of strength that Ukraine has long needed in artillery. It doesn't mean they didn't have artillery before. They did. But the M110 is on a different level. Each shot it fires carries about 90 kilograms of explosive force. That's powerful. It can destroy even the toughest targets. And when using rocket-assisted munitions, it can hit targets up to 30 kilometers away. That means it can reach the enemy even from a distance. It has a wider coverage. There's more pressure on Russia, and it's not just about power. It also has mobility. The M110 is mounted on a truck with a 405 horsepower engine. That means it can move. It's not just stationary. It can attack, withdraw, and change positions. It's harder to target. It's more flexible on the battlefield. And it's more effective in modern combat where speed of movement is important. But of course, this kind of power comes with a price. Firepower isn't free. There are limitations. And this is where the next part of the story comes in. According to the report, each M110 requires 13 people to operate. 5 of them operate the vehicle. The others are in a separate vehicle carrying the ammunition. This is a big commitment in terms of manpower. That's why it's used in artillery brigades that have enough support. When it comes to movement, it can elevate the gun from -2 up to 65 degrees. It can also be moved left and right up to 30 degrees. It's flexible when it comes to targeting. And if the hydraulics fail, there are manual controls that can be used. This means the crew needs additional training, more time, more expenses. When it comes to speed, there are limitations. Usually it's 1 shell every 2 minutes. In intense battles, it can reach up to 2 shells per minute, but the unit only carries 2 shells. That's why quick resupply is important. If the supply is slow, the operation will be slow. On the battlefield, that's a big deal. The M110 is not perfect. Its power comes with a price. But the power of each hit is enough to make you overlook its limitations. Powerful, direct, and capable of causing serious damage. Simply put, the M110 is like a powerful punch. While Ukraine's other faster howitzers deliver rapid attacks, the M110 delivers a heavy blow, a combination of speed and power. And this is the reason why it can change the fight against Russia. There's another important issue: price. The M110 is old compared to other equipment from Western allies. But there's a reason why it was purchased. The total deal reached approximately $230 million. If we base it on the ammunition alone, it turns out that each one costs over $1,500. And this doesn't even include the howitzer itself. According to Defense Express, each unit was priced by Greece at approximately 520,000 euros. This is equivalent to almost $599,000 each. When multiplied by 60 units, this amounts to approximately $35.9 million, just for the howitzers alone. In other words, for $230 million, Ukraine got a lot of firepower. And if you compare it to its effect on the battlefield, the investment is worth it, because in war, it's not just about strength. It's about how you use the budget to get the biggest effect. Because of this, Ukraine's cost per shell drops to around $1,300. This means you don't need a lot of hits to recoup the cost. Hit just a few tanks, destroy just a few troop formations, and the system has almost paid for itself. This is a big deal for a country that has been spending for years because of the war against Russia. 4 years of fighting, 4 years of economic pressure. Some relief is coming. The European Union has promised a loan amounting to $105 billion. The first part of it could arrive in April, but even so, there is still a shortage. Ukraine plans to spend $112 billion in 2026. That means there is still a shortfall of about $45 billion. That's a big hole in the budget. That's why this kind of strategy is important. Low cost, strong impact. And this is where the M110 comes in. It's not just the price that matters. There's another reason why this is dangerous on the battlefield. Versatility. The 52nd Artillery Brigade has various weapons. There's the Ukrainian-made Bodana. It's used for precision strikes on distant targets, command centers, ammunition depots, important Russian locations. They also have the RM-70 Vampire. This is for large-scale attacks against multiple targets, vehicles, soldiers, especially when the enemy moves all at once. Now, they've added the M110. This is used for hardened, high-value targets. Targets that other systems can't destroy. Because of this, the combination of Ukraine's artillery becomes more effective. The Bodana is for long-range targets. The RM-70 is for large-scale attacks. The M110 is for heavy targets. More organized, more effective, harder to counter. In the end, Ukraine didn't just gain more weapons. They also improved the way they use their strength. And in war, victory isn't just about numbers. It's about the right combination of every weapon. This is how Ukraine's artillery mix works. The RM-70 Vampire destroys attacking units and equipment. The M110 hits the hardened targets behind those attacks. And the Bodana destroys deeper Russian rear areas to weaken the next attack. This means that it's not just one direction being targeted. The entire enemy system is being targeted. Right now, the 52nd Artillery Brigade is active in eastern Ukraine. They provide fire support and conduct counter-battery operations. Their targets also include Russian logistics, supplies, transport routes, and ammunition depots. And this is where the M110 becomes especially useful. According to the report, the brigade is operating outside, and Kramatorsk is important. It is one of the 4 main cities that make up the defensive line in Donetsk. A long defensive line that stretches for about 50 kilometers. It's important to hold this city because as long as Ukraine controls it, they can repel Russian forces trying to advance. This is directly connected to Vladimir Putin's goal of controlling Donetsk and the entire Donbass. Ukraine has long fortified its defenses in this area since 2014, so for Russian forces, it has always been difficult to penetrate. Now it has become even more dangerous because of the arrival of the M110. Whenever troops gather, whenever there's a hardened target, a powerful explosion immediately follows. And with the power of the M110, it's not something that can be easily endured. This means higher costs for Russia. More equipment will be destroyed. More supplies will be lost. And it becomes harder to continue the operation. This isn't just about the current battle. The M110 has even broader uses. Ukraine has a total of 60 units, and not all of these are in a single brigade. This means there could be other deployments. One of the most interesting uses for this is in what are called kill zones. These are wide areas filled with defenses. There are drones, there is surveillance, there are other systems that prevent the enemy from advancing. In these areas, Russia's forces are gradually depleted. And if you add M110 firepower to this, the impact will be even greater. In other words, this is not just a simple addition of weapons. This is part of a bigger strategy. Controlling the enemy's movements, targeting their supply, and increasing Russia's expenses with every move they make. And in war, when every move of the enemy becomes more expensive, they get exhausted faster. Every kill zone is filled with defenses against anything that enters. There are anti-tank measures. There are defenses against soldiers. Above, drones are constantly watching. On the ground, there are buried mines that stop vehicles and barriers that can halt Russia's armored vehicles. If soldiers try to enter, they will face long stretches of barbed wire, drones, and tunnels built by Ukraine for ambushes. Now, how does the M110 come into play here? Kill zones are not just for killing. They have another purpose, to make it impossible for the enemy to pass through certain areas. When Russian forces can't get through, they're forced to go around, and that's when they become vulnerable. This is where Ukraine's strategy comes in. They let the enemy pass through open areas, spaces with almost no cover. And when the Russian soldiers are there, the ambush begins. Artillery rains down. FPV drones fly overhead, gradually destroying equipment and personnel. Now think about this. Add the M110 to this setup. Each shell weighs almost 200 pounds. When it hits the ambush areas, almost nothing can survive. No armor, no formation, no defense. That's what Russia could be facing as they continue their offensive. The already dangerous kill zones have become even more deadly. Because of an old weapon that has become useful again, Russia's style of fighting often relies on the sheer number of soldiers and equipment. Direct attacks, repeatedly. But this kind of tactic has become their weakness because the M110 is perfectly suited against them. In other words, a weapon from the Cold War has been revived in modern warfare, and now it's being used to counter Vladimir Putin's way of fighting. And as time goes on, there's a high possibility that Ukraine will find even more ways to improve the use of the M110. Because in war, victory isn't just based on how new your weapons are, it's about how you use them. Ukraine is known for upgrading Western equipment that others are afraid to touch. And one of the best examples of this is what they're doing with the M1 Abrams. They're not just using it, they're fixing it, improving it, adapting it to the real conditions of battle. Instead of following the original design, they're modifying it based on what's needed on the battlefield. They're strengthening the protection. They're improving its use against drones. They're making it more practical for the actual situation. This means that every piece of equipment that arrives isn't just accepted as is. It even becomes more effective. And in this way, even old equipment or imported systems become a new threat to the enemy. And when it comes to expenses, this is more cost effective. Instead of buying a new system that's very expensive, they upgraded what they already have. Lower costs, faster deployment, greater impact in battle. And as the M110 gradually becomes part of the fight, there's another effect that's not immediately visible at first glance. This is the change in the way decisions are made on the battlefield. When there's this kind of artillery that can deliver sudden, powerful strikes, commanders are forced to change their movements. You can no longer just follow the usual plan. You can no longer rely on old tactics. Because even a small mistake can lead to a huge loss. On Russia's side, every order becomes more complicated. Before they send troops or equipment, they have to think about how exposed they are, how likely they are to get hit before reaching the target. And because of this, their movements become slower. Not because they lack strength, but because of dangers that aren't immediately visible. Another problem that arises is coordination. When the units spread out too much to avoid heavy artillery, communication becomes more difficult. It becomes harder to launch a simultaneous attack, and when the timing is off, momentum is lost. In war, momentum is important. When this is lost, even a strong force becomes less effective. On the other hand, Ukraine uses this to control the flow of the battle. They don't need to attack. Sometimes, just the presence of their artillery is enough to stop the enemy's movement. It's like an invisible wall. You can't see it, but you can feel it. And while this is happening, the battlefield becomes even more unpredictable. Nothing is certain. Nothing is guaranteed. Even a simple advance becomes a decision that needs to be carefully considered. And this is where the more dangerous part comes in, the miscalculation, a wrong reading of the situation, a mistaken belief that a place is safe. It can result in the sudden loss of an entire unit. In this kind of battle, it's not just strength that's tested, but also the ability to adapt to every change. And the ability to stay calm, even when what will happen next is unclear. As this kind of pressure lasts longer, it affects the quality of decisions, making you more cautious. Sometimes you become so cautious that you lose the chance to attack. And when that happens, the opponent slowly takes control. It's not in a big battle, but in the small opportunities that are missed. In the end, the effect of the M110 isn't just measured by the power of each shot. It's also measured by how it changes the mindset of those in the fight, how it slows down their movements, how it makes every decision harder, and how it makes every step more dangerous. Because in war, there are weapons that don't just destroy targets. There are also weapons that destroy the destroyers. And when that happens, that's when the real downfall begins.